Welcome to the Health Powered Productivity Podcast. I'm Marcey Rader, speaker, coach, and author, helping you reclaim your workday before it runs off with your sanity. Here, you'll learn sustainable habits to create a life you love without the overwhelm. Let's dive in. Today, I'm talking about designing meetings for neurodivergent brains and why that makes meetings better for everyone. Whether you're leading, facilitating, or just attending meetings, you'll leave this episode with practical ways to make them less draining and more effective. Why does this matter? Well, most meetings are set up for so-called neurotypical brains, but not everyone works that way. People with ADHD, on the autism spectrum, or who have sensory processing differences often struggle in these environments, especially video meetings. And when we design meetings with them in mind, we make meetings more inclusive, more productive, and more energizing for everyone in the room. So, quick definitions: neurotypical versus neurodivergent. Neurotypical refers to someone whose brain functions in ways that are considered usual or expected by societal standards. And according to the Cleveland Clinic, 80 to 85% of people are neurotypical. They tend to be more comfortable, or maybe not comfortable, but adapt better in overstimulating environments. They socialize more easily. They follow unspoken rules intuitively, and they are better able to tune out unpleasant smells, textures, or sounds more easily. Neurodivergent individuals, again, people with ADHD, on the autism spectrum, dyslexia, or sensory processing disorders, experience and interact with the world differently. And here's the key: there's nothing right or wrong about being neurotypical or neurodivergent. Neither one is good, bad, or better than the other. It's just a trait, like your hair color or complexion. And it's typical to have brown or blonde hair, right? But to have red hair is less common. It's not wrong. It's just not typical. It's just different. And before I go any further, I want to say that there will be some suggestions I make that some leaders or people leading meetings will say, no way, I'm not going to do it. Or video cameras on all the time. I'm not saying this is an all or nothing and to do any of these suggestions for all of your meetings, but to be considerate of maybe some of your meetings, implementing one or two of these different suggestions, and just, not thinking about a meeting with 30 people the same that you might with a meeting of 3 people. So first, let's talk about video calls. Many of us have heard about video fatigue, overstimulation, and for neurodivergent people, being on camera all day can be very overstimulating. The bright screens, all the facial movements up close, seeing people up close, the background distractions. When you're in a meeting room, then you're seeing the same background all the time. But if you have 15 people on a call, you're seeing 15 different backgrounds. A cat's jumping up on a desk, somebody's eating, somebody gets up, answers the door. There's all sorts of distractions. And even people without neurodivergence need video breaks. We were not meant to be on all day. And it was a small study, but I loved seeing the MRI, the brain scans of people who were in back-to-back meetings showed incredible amounts of stress. But even those with just a 5 to 10 minute break, that stress level decreased significantly. And that stress is because we're already starting to worry, are we going to get off this meeting in time? I'm supposed to get off a meeting and get on a meeting all in the same minute, and I have to go to the bathroom and I need to refill my coffee, and there's all sorts of stress that starts to happen. So what can help? Encourage camera off options if someone is overstimulated. If there is somebody on your call that says, this is my 3rd video meeting in a row, can I please just have my camera off just for now? Yes. Give them 20 minutes or give them your time to not have their camera on. And for the love of pizza, please, if they are eating, just tell them to go off camera. Allow anyone eating to be off camera. It looks terrible. It's very distracting, and they need to have their cameras off. Normalizing turning off the self-view can be very helpful. I'll talk more about that later. Hiding the chat when it's not needed so it doesn't pull focus. Again, more detail in a minute. And then build in the real breaks between meetings. And real breaks does not mean trade one screen for another and pick up your phone. These are not special accommodations. They're smart strategies for all brains. So the visual overload is coming from all the floating heads, also slides, and then we got pop-up jets. It's like a fireworks show for your brain. And seeing yourself constantly, this is not normal. We are all distracted by our gorgeous, gorgeous faces. Oh, we love looking at ourselves, right? It is not normal for our brain to be looking at our own faces all day. Our brains were meant to look at other people's faces, not our own. And when COVID hit and video meetings became, so huge, it was on as the default that we would see ourselves. And I bet if it was off as the default, people would not be in this habitual behavior of feeling the need to see themselves. And when I hear people say, well, I don't want to turn off my self-view. And again, self-view is different than camera. You're not turning off your camera. You're just turning off the view that you can see yourself. So in Zoom, there are 3 little dots if you hover over your face, and you can turn off self-view. And people will say to me, but I need to see, does my hair look weird? Well, your hair always looks weird on Zoom. I don't know, what is it about video that you can look good in the bathroom mirror and then you're on video and you're like, what happened to me? But anyway, I digress. My hair looks weird. I might be doing something funny with my face. I need to be able to see myself. Well, do you walk around in real life holding a mirror up to your face to make sure that you're not doing something weird? No, we don't do that. So why do we feel like we need to do that on Zoom and see ourselves all the time? A Stanford study found that self-view also increases self-consciousness and mental fatigue. And Harvard research on Zoom dysmorphia, not making this up, Zoom dysmorphia shows people are becoming overly critical of their appearance due to constant on-screen self-monitoring. People who have low self-esteem have lower self-esteem. People who, may suffer from depression actually get more depressed. And so turn off self-view. Use speaker view. You want to highlight or pin whoever is speaking. And also, possibly for some meetings, people have their cameras off when they're not speaking, especially in longer meetings. Now, if it's a discussion with 4 or 5 people and you're each contributing equally, then no, you don't want to be turning cameras on and off, on and off. But, if it's a longer meeting and it's 1 or 2 people mostly speaking, then maybe allow other people to have their cameras off. Now, when I'm doing something distracting, I'm thinking of something like when I'm meeting with my mastermind. Those are 2.5-hour meetings and once a month. And if I have taken my laptop into my kitchen and I'm fixing a snack or whatever, I have my camera off during that time because I don't want them to be distracted by, what's she doing? What's she doing back there? So turn off the self-view. Need for movement, fidgeting, standing, doodling. For many neurodivergent folks, movement isn't a distraction. It's a focus strategy. And my cousin, very brilliant cousin, had a son who also very brilliant and has ADHD. And he used to listen to his school books while jumping up and down on the trampoline. And so just know that for some people, doodling is actually allowing them to listen better. And so if you're leading the meeting, then say, feel free to stand, stretch, or fidget if it helps you focus. And you'll make the room more inclusive without anyone needing to ask. I always say in an in-person meeting, if anybody needs to stand up or you need to go to the back of the room and stretch, go for it. I'm happy for you to do that. As far as fidgeting, it's better, to do something where people can't see you doing it. Oh my gosh, please don't click, 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 click your pen. I don't even have pens that, you know what I'm talking about too, because I will do that click, click, click. And so my pens tend to have caps that come off. And so, think about when, if you're the fidgeter, doing something under the desk or, where people can't see you fidgeting. Walking pads, bike desk, under desk ellipticals, those are great, but be choosy about which meetings you use them on, because some people get motivated by seeing somebody on a walking pad. Other people feel distracted because they're seeing them move like they're kind of bouncing back and forth a little bit, or, just moving around. So what I use my bike desk for is when I'm watching a meeting, like a webinar, or I'm more of a, I'm not really active. It's more like an educational thing. I'll get on my bike desk. If I'm in my mastermind meeting, we're all doing some kind of movement at some time, but never while we're the ones talking. If we are the ones that are it's in our time to give our updates, we aren't riding our bike, we aren't walking on the treadmill, we are fully focused. And then, again, that's a 2.5 hour meeting. And so it's a little bit more casual as well. But think about what meetings you're in that you could maybe move instead. And it's very hard to sit that close to a computer and not touch, tap, tap on your computer. So push yourself back to where you're out of arm's reach. Processing speed. Not everyone thinks well on the spot. Cold calling for answers can create anxiety. It can also reduce contribution. So you want to send agendas ahead of time. Let people respond in writing if that's easier, or always include time to pause and reflect during the meeting itself. Give people, an extra 2 hours after the meeting to provide feedback. There are people like, I'm an extrovert. I process verbally. And so if I think it comes out my mouth, and I will even say, I'm thinking about blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure if I believe it. And then I'll get to the end of what I'm saying and I'll say, okay, yep, no, I'm good, or whatever. For introverts, they process, and then when they figured it out, they may say it. And so if you have a meeting with a lot of extroverts, they may overpower the introverts. And you want to make sure that you get people's everyone's ideas, and also give time after the meeting. And I really like Adam Grant's brain writing technique, where you get the ideas in advance and writing, and then you use that time to discuss. Sensory sensitivities, loud sounds, poor audio, scratchy mics. These can be just annoying to neurotypicals, but can be physically painful or disorienting to others. So you want to have clear audio, offer captions if you can, allow headphones, and also think about in a virtual meeting, it can be really hard because of the different volumes, because people have different qualities of microphones, they're up close or they're far away. And it's like when you're watching YouTube and maybe you're watching a video on gardening and it's very nice and quiet. And then all of a sudden an ad pops in and it's a race car or something. It's so disruptive and harsh. And, if you have somebody with a quiet voice or that's far away from their mic, and then you have me, who I know I have a loud speaking voice. I project very well, which is a feature, not a bug when you are a speaker, but not a feature when you are in a quiet restaurant. But, that can be hard for people too, because you're going from like high volume to somebody low volume. Structure and clarity, unclear agendas and vague expectations. That is stress-inducing for everyone, but especially neurodivergent folks. And, just if somebody is expected to contribute, then let them know ahead of time. Again, don't just put them on the spot. And really think about your meetings anyway. We don't want spectators, we want players. And if you're not contributing or making a decision or providing critical context, you may just not need to be there, unless it's some kind of educational session. So just because you can attend doesn't mean you should. So clarify the purpose of the meeting, who really needs to be there, and the expected outcomes. And then summarize the takeaways and the next steps in writing afterward. And then lastly, virtual cues and chat. Well, in person, you can sense when someone's about to speak, right? They lean in, they shift their body, they make eye contact. But on Zoom, these cues are much harder to catch. And then there's always that awkward delay when someone unmutes. But with chat, oh my gosh. We love chat, right? I love chat. But think about it. It's like talking to somebody next to you in a live meeting. Like if I'm presenting and Bill starts, making a comment about it to Sarah, well, that's basically what a chat is. And when people do emojis in the chat, would you give a thumbs up across the room or make a little heart shape with your hands every time someone made a point in a live meeting? Probably not. You just nod or maybe smile. Subtle, non-intrusive signals. But with the chat using emojis, it gives another banner or a little badge or, it's just something else that takes attention away. And our brains can't fully process two streams of language at once. It just can't. So if someone's reading the chat, they're not listening to you. So you could consider turning off chat during the main discussion or designate specific times to use it. You could tell people that they can close down their chat if they want and just focus on the speaker. And, as a virtual, someone that speaks a lot virtually, I often get asked, do I charge less for virtual presentations? Well, I do charge a little bit less. Some speakers don't because they say you're saving on the travel. But here's the thing. When I'm presenting virtually, it's way more taxing because I have 5 monitors, 2 laptops, an ATEM switcher, and a slide advancer. And I'm monitoring the chat and looking at faces and speaking. It is a lot. And I use the chat all the time. And you know this if you've taken my presentations. I feel like it's a superpower. I get complimented on it all the time. But I also know because I'll say write in the chat, blah, blah, blah. And people will do that. But if the conversation is continuing while I'm talking, I know that people are either reading the chat or they're listening to me. They're not doing both because they can't. So maybe it's just something as simple as we only want high value comments or thoughtful comments. Please don't do any emojis. And that's worked really well for some of my presentations where the people that I'm, speaking for, they'll say, let's just do no emojis. I'm like, awesome. Sounds great. So in closing, when we design meetings with neurodivergent people in mind, we aren't just being accommodating. We're making meetings work better for everyone. Less distraction, more focus, better participation. And if this resonated with you, share it with your team or your leadership. Ask your team to listen to this episode ahead of a meeting and say, are there anything that we want to incorporate in our team meetings? And if you want help designing smarter, more inclusive meetings, connect with me at hello.raderco.com. We have a very popular program called Find Your Meeting Mojo. And we also offer consulting to help people with their meeting guidelines or meeting norms. And if you found the podcast helpful, subscribe to the show, leave a review, or send it to a colleague. And let's build workdays that support the way real people work. Thanks for tuning in to the Health Powered Productivity Podcast. If you got a great tip or insight, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend so more people can learn sustainable habits to create a life they love.
Want more like this? Grab my book, Reclaim Your Workday, or connect at helloraderco.com.